Hello, so today we are joined by double Olympian Hannah Macleod. Hannah's hockey team won bronze in the 2012 London Olympics, then went on to win gold in the European Championships, followed by gold in the 2016 Rio Olympics. After retiring from the sport, Hannah then took on the incredible challenge of sailing around the world in the Clipper Yacht Challenge and has recently taken up marathon running. Hannah, what an amazing career. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure.
Cool. Excellent. So I'm really keen to delve into your career as an athlete, but I wonder if we could start off a little bit with kind of delving into your past and really starting off with the question, when did you get the bug for hockey? Where did that come from?
I actually went to watch my older brother play hockey. He had a school match.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those situations where parents go, what on earth are we going to do with all these children? Get in the car, off you go. So that was actually the first kind of seed that was planted. And then I picked it up at school, at secondary school, simply because women were and girls were banned from playing football. So,
Really?
yeah, so I've got a twin brother, an older brother. I grew up as a kid playing football in the playground, and my passion was actually football. And off I went to secondary school. I was like, can I play football? I used to play with Darren Bent, who went on to be an England international. He was in my class at school. We played in the playground. And I was told, no, you can't. So the only team sport that was available to me at my school was hockey. So that was it for me. So there was that little seed that was planted watching my older brother and going, oh, this looks fun. And I always loved team sports over individual sports. And the journey started really from simply picking up a stick at the age of 12, 13.
Okay.
Do you remember that first time, Hannah, at the age of 12? Do you remember what the experience was like? Was there a few moments that you still think back to now as your first time involved in hockey? That first moment we stepped onto the pitch, or was it a PE teacher for you that led the session? Or
Yeah, I do actually. It was a PE teacher, Alison Emsley, and I still remember her name now. And she was one of the first people I called up when I was selected for London 2012. I managed to track her down. And she was just, I think, shocked that I even remembered her, because she was my hockey coach and I think form tutor in years 7 and 8 at secondary school. And she had no idea the impact she had made on me. And I think it was just that sense of belonging, instantly being part of a sports team, and that I came alive. I was a shy, quiet child. And all of a sudden I found something that I was quite good at. I was above average in terms of coordination. I just had a stick in my hand and I could run around and contribute to the people around me. And that feeling, I still remember to this day. So yes, I remember it very fondly, and to that teacher who had such an impact on me and my aspirations, I think, from there on.
yeah, it's a fascinating start, and I could ask you 4 or 5 questions just off the back of that one piece. But I'm curious about how sport teaches us certain things about ourselves, certain values, certain principles that we otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to or learn had it not been for an involvement in sport. So I'm just curious to ask you that, what when you reflect back now, thinking about your first experiences and your growth journey as a young child, what did that involvement offer you? What did you learn about yourself that you otherwise might not have done had you not been involved?
Yeah. There's all sorts, right? So the first is sport is inherent with failure, right? You will fail and fail and fail and fail. And that was such an incredible lesson to learn relatively young, in terms of how you then just pick yourself up, go, what went on there? How maybe if I try something different, what would the outcome be then? So I think that in itself was an incredibly important lesson. The others is around, for me, discipline and accountability. And I think that comes through more in team sports, in terms of you are accountable for the people around you, but everyone can see whether you're working hard, whether you're turning up on time. It's so transparent in terms of your actions and your behaviours. And I love that. And I think that's served me incredibly well now, it certainly in later life. And resilience, which links to that piece around failure. The highs and the lows that come with sport, you will not experience in many other places in life. And to be able to navigate that, and be able to actually, how do you review both success and failure through exactly the same lens? So it's not all doom and gloom when things don't go right, and it's not, I'm amazing and brilliant and need to stop working hard because things are going exceptionally well. So there, for me, some of the really core kind of lessons that came through from my early experience in sport.
And do you remember moments where some of that resilience was really tested that potentially sort of shaped your approach going forward?
I think the key phase for me was the transition from just loving the sport.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to play at hockey club, which it was just an incredible community. I was just having a great time. Arguably, I should have moved clubs and played National League, but I just wanted to have a good time. And as I moved from others recognising that I had talent and should be progressing into more kind of senior positions, or indeed moving into England under 16s and under 18s, that transition for me was horrendous.
Okay.
It was awful experience. I remember getting selected for a training camp at Lilleshall, and I was one of the few children from a state school, and I didn't know a single person there. And my dad took me along, and he had to find somebody. The first thing he had to do was find somebody to room with. And I was like, you can imagine, can't you, that literally looking around as everyone knows each other and all from similar schools. And my dad literally had to find someone for me to share a room with. I was mortified. I cried. That was day one of this, I think, 3-day camp. And I was like, if this is what it's like being an international, I'm out. It was horrendous. And the feedback, you used to get a letter sent through the post. Shows my age. And it was written feedback on my performance at the camp. It was an assessment centre. And none of that feedback resonated with me. I was like, literally, that's not me. They were talking about skills that I didn't even know how to do. I was like, well, I didn't do that. And I was like, this whole process, this whole experience completely put me off. And it took me a number of years actually to reconnect with the sport, learn to love it again, and figure out actually, how do I work through this experience? And how do I better equip myself to deal with those quite significant setbacks? I'm very careful with the feedback that I give people these days based on that experience, that's for sure.
How was that for your parents as well, supporting you through that? Did they feel equipped to do that?
It's interesting because I'd never actually spoken to my parents. So I actually gave them a call last night and said, can you just help me? We're kind of like, what was your experience of me transitioning from playing club hockey to it all getting completely out of hand and leading to an Olympic gold medal? And they said, well, actually, we just, you just said one day you quite like to play hockey. So we took you along to a club. Next thing we knew, you said that, well, you need to probably move to a better club. So we're like, okay. And that was it. They were incredibly supportive, but not pushy. I think they struggled a little bit from feeling a little bit of an outsider because, again, a lot of the parents' children were all at the same private schools and they weren't kind of in that circle, if you like. But their memories and recollection were literally, we were just a taxi service. We're like, where are you this weekend? How are we going to get to there? So yeah, it was, I think that they just worried. That was it. They were on hand to pick me up when we lost. I think probably the scariest thing for them was around Olympic selection. So I never told them any of the dates for Olympic selection. And for London, I literally just drove an hour and a half to their house and turned up on their doorstep and let them know that I'd been selected because I knew they would just sit at home worrying. So they were the main kind of experiences to navigate. But yeah, apart from that, they were just there for the taxi rides and picking me up.
That's a fascinating thing because I'm really intrigued by parenting styles, the journeys to and from relative fields of play or performance arenas for young aspiring adolescents. Do you think that I wouldn't say detached, so I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I think it has a really powerful and important impact on children when their parents aren't pushy. For example, in Premier League football games for academies, when they hold tournaments, the parents aren't actually allowed to go and watch. So it's a parent-free zone. Different sports, but you can imagine why that's the case for some of the best talent in the country. I'm interested though in your parents and how you perhaps developed as a result of their parenting style. You've mentioned already they weren't pushy and perhaps they gave you space to breathe, or what would you say some of the important things that your parents gave you were that helped you to develop?
Oh, it's deep, isn't it? I think for context, my dad was in the RAF. So I grew up on RAF bases until he left the RAF. I must have been just about heading into secondary school. So we moved house every 2 years. So I went to 4 or 5 different primary schools. And with a father that's born and bred military, there's a discipline. So it was an amazing upbringing because you grow up on a base, so you can just roam free, and you know your parents know you're safe, and because you know you're fenced in, and there's lots of other children to play with. So I just remember every evening being outside, and you were kind of, if you're not back by 7, oh my word! And if you got into any trouble, the military police would like march you home, and you'd be like, never again. So it was incredible. It's very different now in terms of just letting us kind of kids roam the streets at night. But so there's that freedom, but there was a discipline that came with growing up in that sort of environment, which I really valued. And my mum, I think to this day, still doesn't know the rules of hockey. Like the amount she's watched. She's not sporty in the slightest.
Fantastic.
Sorry, Mum. She's not sporty in the slightest, but she loves watching it. So she would always watch Wimbledon or the autumn internationals on TV. So we've always had that kind of in the house. And but she would just, did you have fun today? That would be the commentary.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in like a strengths-based approach, just finding what you love, and that will take you to great places. And I remember telling my twin brother that you just need to find what you love as I'm running around playing hockey. And so I had this lovely balance between my dad, who was definitely a little bit pushier in terms of, oh, interesting you took that shot like that. And I would actually hate the car journeys home with dad. Whereas mum would provide that great balance, and she would say, Norman, stop it. And it's interesting because during when I was playing, I worked at a tennis academy in the south of Spain, which was for young, I think they were kind of 8 to 12-year-olds who were looking to get pro contracts. Awful experience. And their parents would have Excel spreadsheets of everything they ate. And they would be on courtside observing all of their practice sessions. And you can see how that plays out. And I was like, so I had an ambition from a very early age. There was I'd watched the Barcelona Olympics, 92. And I was like, this is amazing. Sally Gunnell, Linford Christie, Colin Jackson, Steve Redgrave. It was just like, oh my word. And that was that. It was on a shelf. Hadn't played hockey at that age. Didn't know anything about hockey. So I had a bit of an inner drive. I didn't need it from my parents. So I wouldn't have changed anything in terms of my upbringing and the support that I received. And with a twin brother, you've got competition every single day. So there's a clear bar. Yeah. I mean, it's brutal.
Does your twin play any sports?
No, he was so talented in terms of he would help me with training sessions, and we'd go and do intervals. And he would literally just sit in front of a computer all day. and then just absolutely obliterate me. So he just wasn't interested. He played lots of different sports, but never really stuck at anything. He wanted to be a pilot. So we are chalk and cheese, but even so, he was taller than me, he was stronger than me, he was like the bar. So that, again, had quite a big influence in terms of my competitive edge, which remains strong today, which I have to just keep down
keep in check.
Yeah.
And you talked before about the Olympic selection. I'm really interested just to kind of understand that process. I seem to know that it's quite difficult, it's quite grueling, puts a lot of pressure on the individuals.
Yes. Leading up to 2012, we had a lot of discussions as a group. So we had 26 athletes towards the end. So in the whole programme, you typically have around 30 players that are training day in, day out together. Only 16 get selected for Olympics. It gets whittled down a little bit as you get closer to the games, but you need a large training squad so that you can play inter-squad matches and things like that. And we had a long conversation around how we wanted to hear about selection, and we had a great deal of input into the selection process. Mm-hmm. So even to the detail around thinking about where you're going to be when you receive the news. So do you want to be around your teammates? Do you need to be with your family? When do you share that you've been selected? So please don't go on WhatsApp and announce it if someone hasn't read their emails and been able to find out for themselves. In terms of when it will be released to the media, all of those factors were discussed as a group and agreed. So everybody had a very set process as to where you were going to be, when you were allowed to say anything to anyone. It doesn't make it easy. I was very fortunate in terms of London and Rio having been successful, but I had housemates that weren't and friends that weren't. But I think we did the best out of what is a terrible situation or a great situation through the processes that we were able to put together.
Mm-hmm. And then when you went into London 2012, what was the level of expectation that the team put on themselves? Because obviously amazing achievement came out with a bronze medal, but was that in line with your expectations? Was that good for the team at the time?
London was a completely different experience in terms of a home Olympics, without a shadow of a doubt, so much more media scrutiny, so much more pressure than Rio or our experience of Rio. And probably in the whole year leading up to London 2012, it felt like that. We knew full well that if we did not medal, our funding would be cut and our programme would fold.
Wow. So
we would not have a future in our sport. Our sport only went professional in 2009 in the build-up to London 2012. Prior to that, we were amateurs, we all had jobs. So it was literally make or break for our sport and us. And we took that into the games. That 3 years between 2009 when we went professional to London 2012 was relentless, and it had to be, but it wasn't sustainable. Did we think we would? I think there was a level of confidence going into that that games, but I would say we were probably the 5th best team there. We were actually quite lucky to come away with a bronze. My recollection. We lost our captain, Kate Richardson-Walsh, in the first game. She got her jaw broken. So she had surgery and had it wired and then came back to play a couple of games later. So there's a lot of events around that games that meant, in my eyes, that it was a phenomenal success.
Yeah.
There's I don't think anything more pressurised than a bronze medal match at Olympics. Final, you're going to come away with something, gold or silver. That bronze medal match is a difference literally between medal or your sport folding.
Yeah.
So my recollection of the bronze medal match was that we were always going to win it. I remember this moment of sitting in the changing room before the game, and it was this temporary cabin. It's less than glamorous. And I just sat there and I remember just making eye contact with a few of my teammates. There was this kind of like lull before we were heading out for a warm-up. And it was just this wry smile. And I get goosebumps now thinking about it. And it was just the most incredible moment of just connecting with people and just knowing everyone is just going to do their job and their best will be good enough. And that was a feeling going out onto the pitch. Now, it turned out from speaking to other people that have actually watched the game, it was nail biting and it was anything but a whitewash. I can't remember what the score was, 3-1, I think, against New Zealand. But I had such a belief stepping out onto that pitch and throughout the game that we were never going to lose that match. I think the experience of the group after the games was really interesting because typically when the Olympics is over, you kind of get swept up into this media fanfare. You get shipped all over the place to do various interviews. You get invited to all sorts of events and everyone has some downtime. So we didn't actually have an opportunity to just come together and make sense of our experience. And as it kind of worked its way through, it turned out that half the group felt that it was an utter failure, that bronze was failure. We had set our stall out to win gold. You have to going into Olympics. Yeah. You can't go, oh, actually, 5th will be good enough. Whereas others perceived it as an absolute success. And that was actually really hard to deal with in the period afterwards. How do you define it? And how does that impact what we go on to do next? And I think our experience post-London 2012 really was an impact of actually how do we unpack that particular game and how do you define success?
The moment you said that you sat in the dressing room and you get tingles now thinking about that moment, and you made some eye contact and connections with your teammates, and you had the feeling that you knew you were going to win. Did you feel like that for all of the games in 2012? And if not, so what was what changed? What was the difference for you that you were able to feel that in that moment?
We definitely didn't feel that before every game. And I think we made it into the playoff spots because I think Japan did us a favour. And I remember sitting in the Olympic Park and you could hear the stadium from the athletes' village. And we all agreed we weren't going to watch it on TV. I think it was between Japan and China, and if Japan won, we would make it through to the next round. And I heard the roar of the crowd, and I was like, that must be Japan that scored, because it's all British supporters in there. And that was the moment we knew we were able to progress. And we lost to Argentina, which meant that we were then unable to make the final. And in hockey, you play 8 games in 11, 12 days. It's relentless. And you have 24 hours between your semi-final and then whichever medal match you're in. So it's all around how quickly can you reset as a group going into, you have 24 hours. So lost to Argentina, New Zealand had lost their match to the Netherlands. And apart from that kind of moment in the changing room of just going, our processes have got us in a great place. So we all agreed that immediately after your match, you're allowed to be however you need to be. If you need to cry, you cry. There's not going to be someone going, come on, everyone, let's get, we've got an important game tomorrow, because everyone's going to experience that emotional roller coaster in a very different way. So we agreed that was an important process for us. We then had an agreement that when we come to do our pool recovery the next morning, every conversation is forward focused. And we're no longer talking about if only I'd done this, or if only we hadn't played that move against. No more if onlys. It's all around New Zealand in the next match. So these kind of processes got us in a much better place when you then come to, 24 hours later, I think we got to bed about 2:00 in the morning after the Argentina game. It was played late at night. So you're absolutely exhausted. It's not like you've had the best preparation going into a bronze medal match. And the other memory I've got is as you come out for the national anthems, you're in the tunnel of the stadium, lined up next to each other as two nations. And I remember looking at the New Zealanders, and they looked destroyed still. They looked broken from their experience of the disappointment of not making the final. And having had that moment in the changing room and just getting a sense, and it's little things, isn't it? They're the moments you can't plan for. They're the moments that come because of the work that you've done day in, day out for years as a group, really understanding each other, creating a sense of belonging, creating a shared understanding of what am I going to see from you in these most pressurised moments? Is it predictable behaviours? Can I really trust you? Do I understand what decisions you're going to make in these moments? And all of that played out in that moment. So for me, it was just an incredible experience of connecting with that group.
And how did you go then from the success of London, you know, with that incredible bond, that level of trust that you had as a team, into the World Championships, where you then came out with 11th, which I guess was essentially sort of not a success in terms of where you'd come from. What happened in that period?
Yeah, I think it was a total disaster, was fair to say. Definitely the worst, I think, performance in the history of our sport. 11th out of 12th at the World Cup. It was truly tragic. And less than 2 years after winning bronze. And it was without a shadow of a doubt the darkest place I've ever been in my life. And it was coming. That performance was coming. And we had a new coach that came in after London 2012. He had come, Jason Lee, he'd worked with the men, he moved across to the women. Danny Kerry, our coach from London, moved up as performance director, so he was still involved. And we had about a 50% turnover of players between the cycles, so a lot retired after London. And we had a crop of young athletes come into the group. And it was really difficult for that group of athletes coming in because we had transitioned from this place of being 8th, 9th in the world, never winning anything, and being part-timers, to becoming full-time, but recognising the amount of hard work it takes to be successful. And it's a really interesting one to unpack in terms of why did I feel that things weren't going well, and what was I picking up that was leading me to think there's a performance coming that's not great. And I think in part there were some great principles being applied from a coaching perspective to the group. Read a textbook, these are the right things to do, implement with a group of players. But I don't think there was a buy-in. And it wasn't the right thing for this particular group of players. So, for example, we were trying to create a flatter hierarchy within the group so that more people felt empowered to make decisions and to contribute. Great, absolutely fantastic. But we had Kate Richardson-Walsh, who'd been captain for a decade and was a phenomenal leader. And then you had individuals who were really just trying to learn how to work hard on a day-to-day basis. And for me, there was it's absolutely right that we need to create a really safe environment for people to voice their opinions, but someone's got to make the decision. And everyone is looking to that person. So why dampen their authority? And then it became harder and harder to hold each other to account. So it was such small behaviours that were slipping over a period of 18 months. People not turning up on time, wearing the wrong kit, not providing feedback to each other, not challenging each other to drive the standards higher, just not quite working hard enough on a day-to-day basis. And I think there was this element of a philosophy around we're here for a short time, let's make it a good time, which was important based on our experience of London, but there's a spectrum. And all of that started to create this snowball effect. And I was having conversations with our CEO and saying, I think like the culture's not right. And when you describe it, it's really hard for the senior leadership team to take action because there's no catastrophic failure. There's no massive event where they feel confident that they can intervene.
Yeah.
There isn't an issue with the coaches. There is an issue around discipline. And I was like, well, people are turning up late. We can't hold each other accountable. I get it now. It's really hard to act on that. So there was a decision that was made whereby I had to sit in front of all of our coaching staff and share why I felt that things were going wrong. And Kate Richardson-Walsh had to do the same thing. And I remember going round and asking a few other players if they would support me in this conversation. And because it wasn't just me that was seeing this, there's probably 4 or 5 of the more senior players just recognising the culture eroding. And they were like, I'm sorry, but I don't feel that I'm in a strong enough position to sit in front of the coaches, as in, I'm scared I'll get sacked.
Yeah.
And you don't have an employment contract. You can literally, I've had teammates walk into a meeting and never seen them again. That's their contract ended.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always on a bit of a knife edge. And I think I was pretty close to getting cut because I was a troublemaker at that point. And sure enough, I went into the meeting.
Troublemaker because you were a truth teller, or?
In all honesty, I probably didn't go about it in quite the right way. I was so emotional about it. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets. I think I was right to stand up for what I saw and what I believed in. But with that came an awful lot of emotion. I was incredibly upset. I was angry at seeing what we had created in London 2012, to see it all fall by the wayside and feeling like I wasn't listened. And I felt like a child with all these adults telling me, get on with it. So it was pretty isolating experience. And I went into that meeting and sat in front of the coaches and I bottled it. Absolutely bottled it. I was like, absolutely dampened down everything I was going to say. So nothing was done. And then sure enough, we carried on, got to the World Cup and the wheels fell off the cart. It was appalling. It was really bad. The team just fractured. And then we had, we missed our medal target. So the funding body has to do a review to see what's happened. And I remember these independent reviewers interviewing every single person in the team. And again, I was sitting there going, people weren't turning up on time, not holding each other to account. And again, it just sounded ridiculous. But it made me realise the power of the small behaviours.
Yeah.
And how quickly your culture can erode if you do not pay attention to it. And how do you give space for people to have the conversations that matter? There was so much going on under the surface in all sorts of different groups. We had this mediation session after the World Cup. Kate Hayes, sports psychologist, came in and joined us. And we literally locked in a room, all 30 athletes, door closed, big circle, shoes off, talk. And it was frightening what surfaced. There was so much misunderstanding between players. There were so many assumptions that had been made about why people were behaving in a certain way. The youngsters felt like the older players were being too harsh on them. The older players felt the younger players weren't working hard enough. All sorts and it was like, how has this not surfaced before? Because none of it was truth in their own minds, but all of it literally just, as soon as we'd given the space for the conversation. 18 months later, that same group of players went on to win Olympic gold.
Yeah.
Was that a defining moment for you, Hannah?
It was a defining moment in terms of really understanding and forming my beliefs around how to create a sustainable, high-performing team. I mean, the businesses I work with now, the frustration around taking time out of delivery to sit in a room and have a certain type of conversation. And it's you cannot achieve high performance without investing time in having certain types of conversation. There's almost an expectation by doing all this work together, it might happen. You can leave it to chance, sure. But it requires dedicated time, and that might be away from delivering your day job. The importance of actually talking about the behaviours that matter for this group. Again, absolutely essential. And how do you really hold each other to account? How do you provide feedback continuously, so it's not just a form you fill in once every quarter? And it's not difficult, just requires a space.
And were you given a framework? Were you given the tools to have those difficult conversations?
We did. I mean, we were fortunate to have a sports psychologist work with us throughout. Andrea first joined us in the build-up to Rio 2016. But it was trial and error as well. So I remember going into London, we had a process whereby we were trying to upskill around giving feedback. And it was this forum. So basically, if we felt that an athlete was not quite delivering the behaviours and standards we expected, it's bonkers now, but we literally put them in the forum, which was in the middle of a circle. And then we could all provide feedback to that person sitting in the middle of the circle. We tried it twice and then canned it. People on the outside giving feedback were crying. The people in the middle, person in the middle was crying. It was horrendous. Now, it's a methodology that is proven.
Okay.
It didn't work for us.
No.
So again, it's right. What systems do you put in place, and how, and processes, and how do you continuously review them to make sure they are actually working for you and not just something that, seemed to work on paper? So that didn't work for us. But through a period of time, we were able to figure out actually what does that look like for us. And I think it always amazes me, actually. It's really hard, a bold move from our coach to take players off a pitch and put them in a meeting room.
Yeah.
How do you justify that to a funding body? We're going to let 30 women just chat, like 10 hours a week of meetings. And they're going, they're not the most skillful bunch. Why are they only on the pitch 8 hours a week? And I look back now and go, wow, actually, that time we spent in meetings was so important. But every meeting, there would be notes, there'd be actions, would follow through. There was an absolute rigour and discipline around those conversations, but everyone could speak up. And I remember even the what if scenario. So we would have other conversations around what might happen. So what if, and this is almost ridiculous, but what if you walk into a changing room and there's no space for you? So this is in the preparation for Rio 2016. As a senior athlete, I'm likely to look at the junior athlete in the group and say, would you like to change in the shower? I'm going to take that bench. Not great. So we decided through this what if conversation, you can come up with any what if you want, and then mitigations. So in preparation for Rio 2016, we went to the changing rooms a couple of days before our first match and all agreed where we were going to sit. So we all had our bench space. It's like, what if I end up sitting next to Alex Danson, who just wants to listen to music, and I want to chat? Okay, so now we're going to agree who we're going to sit next to in the changing room as well before every single match. That's the level of planning that went on. So we had so many systems, processes, different spaces to have different types of conversations. And I would say all of that time was just as important as the time we spent on a pitch or in the gym.
Yeah. And then you won, obviously, the Rio Olympics. How did that feel in that moment? Just sort of bring that to life.
Oh my word. It's the craziest feeling, and I don't think I'll ever feel it again. Imagine every emotion you've ever experienced in your life slapping you in the face all at once. And it was a roller coaster within the space of kind of 2 seconds. You'd be absolute elation, in tears, and then just emptiness. And literally it went like that. And our sports psychologist, Andrea, had secretly organised a rooftop bar for us to go to after the match. She didn't tell anyone because she didn't want to preempt successful failure. And I remember we headed up to this rooftop bar, and it was just so we had a private space to be with our family. And I was sitting, my dad had gone off to the loo, I was sitting with my mum, and I started crying, uncontrollable crying. And I remember my dad coming back from the loo, seeing me crying, and literally like walked away again. He was like, best for your mother to sort that one out. And it was because from the age of 8, whereby this idea of the Olympics and Olympic gold was put on the shelf, there's nothing on the shelf anymore. What do I do now? I've been chasing a dream that never really felt like it would ever materialise has happened. Now what? There's an emptiness. And your first thought is, let's go again. That thought is quickly followed by, oh my word, can I do 4 years again? And I think to this day, I haven't figured out how to replace that. And I literally can see it in my mind. It's that just sitting on a shelf. So, I mean, the great thing about a team sport is you can discuss these things. I'd hate to be an individual athlete in that situation, but I think we all had quite similar experiences in that moment of just disbelief. Yes, a lot of joy, but now what?
Yeah. And is that what drove then what you did sort of subsequently, where after you retired, you did the Clipper around the world yacht challenge? Was it trying to fill something that you'd lost or find something that you'd lost?
I think the key driver actually was recognising I'm no longer going to be the best in the world at what I do straight away. And it had been a while since I'd been a complete novice and a beginner. So I wanted to throw myself into something whereby I literally didn't have a clue how to do it. Like, I'd never sailed. It was an opportunity that was and I also said to myself, I'm just going to say yes to everything after the Olympics. And this one came quite early. So I all of a sudden found myself, you literally get 4 weeks training and then you find yourself in the middle of the ocean. It also gave me an opportunity to test what I believe to be true around building high-performing teams. So on a Clipper boat, 70-foot yacht, you have a crew of 20. You work in 2 shifts. So 10 on, working on deck, 10 below, sleeping. And you rotate. So that was some of the main reasons why I thought, yeah, this will be a good idea. It was brutal.
What was the hardest bit for you?
It was incredible to. I mean, there's nothing more amazing than being in the middle of the ocean, and there was literally nothing. You would see nothing, no other boats. 4 days. You didn't have access to. It's the best I've ever slept. Literally in this kind of canvas hammock at a 40-degree angle. Literally, you're like this, sweating below deck. Glorious night's sleep. Because no social media, no Wi-Fi. It was just pure and simple life. However, when I joined the boat in Australia, so I picked up at halfway through the race. The whole race takes 8 months, and I just did one leg of it. And the crew had come from Cape Town across to the west coast of Australia, and they had experienced a death. So Simon Spears had gone overboard. They were trying to change a sail at night, and his tether snapped. They were able to retrieve him, but he had passed away. So the crew that arrived, which I joined, had experienced that. So it was an investigation before we then set sail, and we were going around the south coast of Australia, around Tasmania and up to the east coast. And I had crewmates that were experiencing panic attacks. There were, I think, 3 other members that were joining the boat at the same time I was, and then a couple departing. And we got about halfway round, so I think we were 2 weeks in, and there was quite a lot of tension emerging between the 2 watches, it's 10 on, 10 off. And what was starting to surface was that, I mean, the race it's called the race of your life. It is a race. There's a lot of kudos if you win a leg. There are TV cameras, there's film crews, there's an absolute carnival when you arrive into port. You will stand on a podium. People are after that. They've paid for that experience. So they're there to race. But we had a crew that had experienced a death, and for them, they had no interest in racing. They wanted to get round safely. And actually, we had never collectively discussed what does success look like for us on this boat, because there was an assumption we're racing. And halfway through, we ended up having to get everyone on deck and have this out. And you had people that had paid an awful lot of money, and they were like, we're here to race. Why aren't we pushing harder? And you've got other members, quite rightly, who just want to change a sail safely at night. And it was a harsh lesson in terms of, once again, regardless of how obvious it seems in terms of what you're trying to achieve, you have to have that conversation. So we were able to reset and go, success for us is changing a sail really efficiently and safely at night and during the day. And we will celebrate when we do that. Yeah. Or it's almost you change sails all the time. It's like another sail change. But that became our measure of success. And that was quite hard for some people to accept, because it meant that they wouldn't be standing on a podium. But that conversation alone, once again, helped improve the culture on that boat, the experience everyone was having. And we ended up getting everyone safely around from that moment. And hopefully people found their moments of success in the smaller actions that were important to us, as opposed to the external validation of standing on a podium. So whilst it was what turned out to be a little bit of a crazy idea of, well, let's learn how to sail, never done it before, and let's do it in one of the toughest competitions you can do it in, to then these experiences that I never imagined would play out. But I met some incredible people, and there's certainly some lessons that I hold on to incredibly tightly as a result.
Yeah. And recently you've run the London Marathon.
Yes.
And I'm interested because you talked right at the beginning about, what you really loved was that team element, the team sport. You went from hockey, you did the sailing experience. So, how's it been making the transition to something that is very much then an endurance race where you are really on your own?
There's a really good reason why I played hockey, because you can walk at times. I was very good at changing direction. And no, we used to train alongside the rowers at Bisham Abbey.
Okay.
And I was fascinated by the fact that they can literally just switch off and endure pain for hours. I'd watch them on an ergo just going back and forth. And I was like, you're crazy. And I was a little bit fascinated into the mindset that you must be able to train, right? So that was kind of one of the reasons. It was also, I could fit it in around work now. Turns out it's really tough to exercise and work. Much easier just to get paid to do it. So I was really interested to explore how I could switch my mind off from saying, just walk, just stop, take a break, and quieten the noise and just endure. And they talk about the marathon being predominantly mental. It's so true. So that was the main reason. And again, there's something around the discipline of ensuring that you train appropriately, you hydrate appropriately, you're diligent with your nutrition. So that kind of fascinated me a little bit as well. It was the most painful thing I've ever done, without a shadow of a doubt. I was in agony from about mile 18. I think I got overtaken by Rhino. And I just remember shouting at myself out loud, keep going. I must have come across an absolute lunatic, but there's nothing more satisfying than looking back and going, I couldn't have given any more. That's everything I had to give on that day. That is an amazing feeling. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to experience the London Marathon. Oh my word. Yeah. It's incredible. Everyone is there for a purpose. The stories that people are bringing to that course. And it's almost not okay to talk about your time because everyone's running their own little race. And I've always had the mindset of, well, how quickly can we get round? Where did I rank? And it was a really good lesson to remind me of going, what are you capable of today? And how close can you get to that? That's to say that I might have a time in mind, but yeah. So was I able to quieten my mind? Reasonably so. I think there's more to go with that one. Yeah. But it's that battle with yourself. Just fascinating.
Yeah. I know we could literally talk all day, but I'm just going to ask you a final question, if I may. I think when you went into the 2016 Olympics, your purpose was really around be the change, inspire the future generation. What's next for you?
What's next for me? I hold on to a part of our team's purpose was to be the difference. And that's what helped me transition from sports into the work that I do now. My purpose is to be the difference. I will continually seek opportunities where I feel like I can make a difference. And it guides the work that I do as an executive coach and consultant. And finding those moments whereby there's a desire to improve performance. There's a desire to get the best out of a group of people. That's a place I want to play. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have some highs and some lows that can contribute to that narrative. But for me, it's simply finding those opportunities to be the difference. And that's given me such a great purpose after finishing sport. And I don't think anyone really comes to terms with retirement. I think that's forever something you wrestle with. But being able to work out what's really core to what you believe in and how you want to continue to add value definitely aids that transition. And so far it's guided me well. And maybe there's a few more opportunities to find some discomfort and test what you're capable of.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been fascinating and really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah.